Chief Commander, a great number of dire beasts have been discovered 10 kilometers outside the city, and what? Spit it out. Long Duo shattered the dozens of dire beasts with a single punch. These ordinary dire beasts could be easily killed by Long Duo even if they were all dire beast lords. That was nothing difficult. The reason why the entire city was in chaos was that the distribution of these dire beasts was too widespread, and there were too many of them. It was impossible to wipe them out completely in a short amount of time. However, with the strength of the Dragon Mountain base alone, given enough time, they could wipe out these fleshworm dire beasts. And many demons are discovered among the fleshworm dire beasts. It's estimated that there are more than 30 of them. Impossible! The chief commander's expression changed abruptly. 30 demons? How was this possible? Back when they were at the front line of the decisive battle, there were only 10 odd demons, one less than the number of inhuman experts at the Dragon Mountain base. However, now that he thought about it, if all of this was a scheme by fleshworm dire beasts, was there being one less demon on the other side than inhuman experts in the Dragon Mountain base a coincidence, or was it intentional? The more Long Duo thought about it, the more he felt that something was amiss. However, regardless of whether it was a scheme or not, the entire Dragonlith city was about to face a real threat now. There had been dire beasts parasitizing it previously, plunging the entire Dragonlith city into chaos. However, no matter how chaotic the situation, it was still under Long Duo's control. At most, Dragonlith city would suffer heavy losses. But with the arrival of a large army of fleshworm dire beasts, mortal danger would come to not only the entire Dragonlith city, but even the 16 inhuman experts as well. Report to the higher-ups at once. Dragonlith city has been attacked by an unknown dire beast army. More than 30 demons have been discovered for the time being. Request reinforcements from the higher-ups. Lastly, order the 15 platoon leaders to converge outside the city immediately. With that, Long Duo immediately tumbled around and rushed out of the city. Actually, he knew very well that the higher-ups were unlikely to send reinforcement when the current situation was unclear. What if the reinforcements became parasitized again? Therefore, the only thing they could rely on now was the power of Dragon Mountain base and the entire Dragonlith city. Beep beep beep. In a spacious hall, soldiers were bustling everywhere. The leader was an old man in military uniform. His face was stern, but he was staring at the screen intently right now. He was the Minister of Armed Forces in Country Hua, and he controlled all the military power in the country. Now that the World Alliance has been established in this world, every country had independent administrative rights, but military rights are unified under the World Alliance. There were a total of 9 marshals in charge of the armed forces of the World Alliance, and they were the 9 sages of the present world who wielded all the military power in the world. If not for this, how could humans expand so many territories so quickly when their overall strength was inferior to the dire beasts? The 9 sages were the supreme marshals, but they also established a ministry of armed forces in each country and appointed ministers. The minister had full authority to command all armed forces, including martial artists and military forces. Even the highest executive of a country could not interfere. At this moment, the Minister of Armed Forces of Country Hua, Minister Liu, was already overwhelmed. The sudden parasitic crisis in Dragonlith City was not isolated to Dragonlith City alone. It happened almost everywhere in the country. The reason for it had already been found. Almost without exception, there were people who came from Dragonlith City in these places. Even though Minister Liu had already ordered everyone from Dragonlith City to be quarantined countrywide, it was still unknown how much effect this would have. However, he knew that this could not possibly stop the parasitism. After all, wherever parasitism had occurred, it was highly probable that someone else would be parasitized. With no way to test the state of parasitism right now, once the incubation period was up, there was bound to be an outbreak of more parasitism. Right now, Minister Liu could only hope that the research department could quickly figure out how to identify the parasite, so as to quell the parasitism as soon as possible. Of course, Minister Liu was also paying attention to Dragonlith City. After all, there were 3 million people there. Minister Liu, Chief Commander Long Duo of Dragon Mountain Base, and the Mayor of Dragonlith City have sent a message in conjunction, requesting reinforcements. A great number of dire beasts have appeared outside Dragonlith City, and there are even more than 30 demons. Dragonlith City is in imminent danger. 30 demons. Minister Lu's heart ached immensely. Of course, he knew the current situation in Dragonlith City, and how difficult it was for Long Duo. However, he was also in a dilemma. Currently, the fleshworm dire beasts had been determined to be parasitic predators. They were a brand new type of dire beast. The scale, means of parasitism, means of transmission, and so on were all unknown. How could he send in people to rescue them like this? If numerous experts were sent over, what if they also became parasitized? That would only make matters worse. This was also why he had given the order for Dragonlith City to hold out on its own. He had not sent in a single soldier in consideration of the overall impact. Although this was very cruel to the 3 million people of Dragonlith City, this was a necessary sacrifice. However, there were 3 million people, with so many vibrant lives in there. If they really did not send in reinforcements, the entire Dragonlith City would fall to those dire beasts' attack. How many dire beasts would arise from parasitism then? It would be unimaginable. This was probably humanity's greatest crisis after the calamity a century ago. Inform Dragonlith City that we will send a spaceship to drop a large amount of living supplies. As for reinforcements, tell them to hold out for 10 more hours. Reinforcements will definitely arrive in 10 hours. Minister Lu could not really just stand by and watch 3 million die in Dragonlith City like this. 10 hours. Many people were confused. What could 10 hours do? Was it to mobilize many troops or martial artists? Tell them that in 10 hours, one of the 9 sages, the Invincible Fist Sage, will personally rush to Dragonlith City to rescue them. What? Lord Invincible Fist Sage. Many people were shocked. That was one of the 9 sages, one of the 9 supreme marshals of the World Alliance's armed forces. However, the Invincible Fist Sage and the other 8 sages were stationed deep in the Outland all year round. After all, there were extremely fearsome existences among dire beasts as well. These all required overseeing by the 9 sages, so that those fearsome dire beasts did not dare to show themselves. If not for this, how could human martial artists have expanded territories so easily? That's right, it's Martial Invincible Fist Sage. Get Long Duo to hold out for 10 hours by any means possible. Actually, Minister Lu had not contacted the Invincible Fist Sage yet, but as the Invincible Fist Sage's subordinate, he knew the Invincible Fist Sage very well. The Invincible Fist Sage would never just watch the 3 million people die in Dragonlith City. He would definitely take action. However, the prerequisite was that Dragonlith City had to persist for 10 hours. After all, no matter how fast the Invincible Fist Sage was, it was impossible for him to arrive at Dragonlith City in an instant. 10 hours was the least amount of time needed. Everyone's heart was heavy. 10 hours. With the current state of panic in Dragonlith City, and the aggressive assail of the fleshworm dire beasts, could Dragonlith City hold out for 10 hours? Outside Dragonlith City, the east wind was blowing. Led by Long Duo, the other 15 inhuman experts had already arrived. However, only about 2,000 other martial artists arrived in succession. Back at the Dragon Mountain base, there were about 5,000 martial artists in total. Yet now, there were only about 2,000 of them left. Other than those who had left Dragonlith City previously, the remaining people had either not received the order, or had not come to the outside of the city after receiving it. There was another possibility, and that was that those martial artists could never receive the order. They had been parasitized, or died fighting the dire beasts. Long Duo glanced at all the martial artists. He saw Lin Feng among the crowd. The one who had a strange illness, yet was the strongest genius of the Myriad Academy in the past decade, was now standing quietly in the crowd. Long Duo took a deep breath and said to the 15 inhuman experts, "There's a dire beast army led by 30 demons outside the city, and there are 3 million civilians in the city. For this battle, we might not even have a 10% chance of winning. Chief Commander, we've broken the genetic lock. We've been on the front line for so many years. When have we ever been afraid? If worst comes to worst, we will die. But no matter what, as long as we're here, we must not let the dire beasts charge into Dragonlith City. That's right. Ever since I've broken the genetic lock, My family and friends have all led abundant lives. I have no more regrets. Even if I die in battle, I will definitely be a hero. My family will be proud of me. We won't yield any ground to them. The 15 inhuman experts would not yield any ground. They all knew what it meant once they decided to fight to the death. It was very likely that even inhuman experts like them would die. But just as they said, so what if they died? The purpose of martial artists was to protect humanity and maintain peace. They had already obtained the most material life that human society could give them. Even after their deaths, they would certainly become heroes, and their families and descendants would be cared for. They no longer had any worries for the future. It wasn't just the 15 inhuman experts. This was the same thought of over 2,000 martial artists who had arrived at the outside of the city. If worst came to worst, they would die, but after their deaths, they would definitely be heroes, and their families would be cared for. The entire human society revered heroes who died in battle at the front line. Furthermore, the remunerations were very generous. There would definitely not be cases of heroes encountering injustice in addition to sacrificing. The human society was thriving, and human martial artists dared to risk their lives. This was why the entire human territory was expanding rapidly, and more martial artists appeared. Long Duo was very satisfied. Back when he had not broken the genetic lock, hadn't he also showed such courage when fighting at the front line? Looking at these energetic and battle-ready martial artists, he felt very proud. Very good. You have not forgotten your duty as human martial artists. However, you absolutely won't be forgotten, nor will the 3 million citizens of Dragonlith City. One of the highest commanders of the armed forces, the invincible fifth sage of the 9 sages of the world, will arrive in Dragonlith City in 10 hours. As long as we can hold out for 10 hours, and hold out until Lord Invincible Fist Sage arrives, we will be saved. The 3 million people in Dragonlith City will be saved. Long Duo's words were carried forth powerfully, and all the martial artists heard them clearly. In fact, Long Duo would not keep this news from the people of Dragonlith City. He had the mayor inform all the people of Dragonlith through the radio, television, and so on. Such hope was necessary to inspire everyone in despair, and this news was very timely. Many of the citizens who received the news took the initiative to construct defenses outside the city and gave encouragements to all the martial artists. There were military police and some martial artists who continued to hunt those dire beasts inside the city, and it was generally safe. Right now, the most dangerous place was outside the city. The army of 30 demons and dire beasts were coming. If they could not hold out for 10 hours, it would spell annihilation for everyone in Dragonlith City. Rumble. The martial artist army outside the city could already feel the ground shaking. Looking from afar, there was dust along the whole way. The dire beast army had finally arrived. Furthermore, it was vast and mighty. There seemed to be tens of thousands of them. If so many dire beasts charged into Dragonlith City, the entire city would probably tumble into a living hell. Lin Feng was also in the crowd. He held his saber and stared intently at the dire beasts. They were all fleshworm dire beasts. There were no longer dire beasts like the proboscis beasts and hedgehog dire beasts from the decisive battle at the front line before. All tens of thousands of dire beasts were fleshworm dire beasts. With such a great number of dire beasts, and all of them being fleshworm dire beasts at that, everyone knew that this battle was almost doomed. Be it in terms of numbers or in human-level battle prowess, the dire beast army was far stronger than the human martial artists outside the city. How could they resist so many dire beasts for 10 hours? When Long Duo saw this, he laughed aloud. That's right. With so many dire beasts, there was no need for any tactics, for tactics were useless. Haha, this is just as well. I can finally go all out with killing this time. Ever since Long Duo became the chief commander, the times when he personally went to battle became fewer and fewer. However, this time he did not need to command at all. Kill! Long Duo roared. His voice rang out like a muffled clap of thunder. Key! All the martial artists also knew that there was no such thing as lucky flukes in this battle. If they could not resist, they would die. However, they could not allow these dire beasts to charge into Dragonlith City, even at the cost of their lives. Boom! The martial artists moved. they took the initiative to attack. The 16 inhuman experts in particular charged in front of all the martial artists. Long Duo reached out and clapped. His palms sucked out all the air in a radius of dozens of meters. With a push, dozens of dire beasts and fleshworms were instantly crushed into pieces. The other inhuman experts also displayed their abilities. Every inhuman expert who broke the genetic lock would awaken one or a few abilities. Faced with them, there was no difference between ordinary dire beasts, dire beast lords, or even dire beast kings. With a single palm strike, they were all smashed into a bloody mist. However, there were also demons among those dire beasts, and there were 30 of them. It was even the first time many inhuman experts had seen so many demons. The 30 demons were all enormous, like 30 small mountains. They were very conspicuous among the dire beasts. Faced with the slaughter of the ordinary dire beasts by the inhuman experts, the 30 demons only watched indifferently. They did not attack immediately, as if ordinary dire beasts were nothing in their eyes. These demons were about as intelligent as humans. They did not care about the deaths of ordinary dire beasts. In fact, on careful thought, they could parasitize constantly. As long as they had enough parasitic hosts, they could get as many dire beasts as they wanted. These ordinary dire beasts were indeed just cannon fodder. Ha! Satisfying, truly satisfying. An inhuman expert was wielding a huge axe. With a swing of his axe, dozens of dire beasts were sliced into countless pieces. The other inhuman expert was like a bulldozer. His body was like a small giant, expanding in circles. Wherever he passed, he practically paved a bloody path. The 30 demons had been watching everything apathetically the whole time. Finally, one of them, who was obviously twice the size of the other demons, let out a sharp screech. Then, as if they had gone berserk, all the dire beasts responded with screeching sounds. Countless dire beasts immediately went berserk, and the 30 demons moved at once, targeting the dozen or so inhuman experts directly. As the largest television station in Dragonlith City, the television station of Dragonlith had a rather complete variety of professional broadcasting equipment. Moreover, the television station even had a special escort team. As Dragonlith City was close to the front line, the television station often filmed some documentaries related to dire beasts. Without the protection of the escort team, it would be impossible for the reporters and cameramen to go deep into the front line. But in the present, when the dire beasts outside the city appeared, and the entire Dragonlith City was in crisis, the television station made a shocking decision. Shooting a documentary. With the battle outside Dragonlith City as the theme, they would film a documentary called Life and Death in 10 Hours. Moreover, this documentary would unprecedentedly adopt the live broadcast method for the first time. It used the method of a live broadcast documentary to show the real situation of Dragonlith City to the audience outside Dragonlith City. This was not an attention-grabbing gimmick, but professional conduct. This was the professional conduct as a television station and as a media company. The people at the television station knew very well that Dragonlith City was in imminent danger. If the martial artists in front could not hold out for 10 hours and allowed the dire beasts to charge into Dragonlith City, the entire Dragonlith City would become a living hell. All they could do was to present this process truthfully to the entire world. The executives of the television station had already decided to film this special documentary through a live broadcast. When they looked for the host, however, there was a rare silence. How dangerous was it to shoot a documentary outside the city? Even with the protection of the escort teams, one could still be torn to pieces by dire beasts. In the end, an unexpected person stepped forward. Li Wei, the leading female host of the television station, volunteered. She was willing to film such a special and dangerous documentary. Li Wei was only 24 years old this year, but she was already the leading host of Dragonlith City. She originally had a bright future, yet was caught up in this dire beast incident. Seeing Li Wei step forward, many people secretly lamented. At this moment, Li Wei and the cameraman were standing outside the city. Beside them were the 12 members of the escort team, all of whom were grade 7 professional martial artists or above. The television station still put in a lot of effort in this aspect and sent their most elite team to protect Li Wei. Dear viewers, what you all saw today is a special documentary. It's being broadcasted live by Dragonlith City TV. I'm Li Wei. Li Wei was wearing a professional suit and looked very refined. She still had a smile on her face. This live broadcast documentary, which was facing the entire world, might also be the last program she hosted in her life. Therefore, she strove to do everything to perfection. The scene changed, and many dire beasts appeared on the screen. The savage side of those dire beasts was displayed on screen. Martial artists were easily torn to pieces, or even devoured by dire beasts. The scene was very gory and also very realistic. Li Wei did not know that the special documentary for this global live broadcast had already exceeded the viewership ratings of all previous television programs. Almost 80% of the televisions around the world were playing the documentary. Not only was there a live broadcast on television, there was also a live broadcast online. Countless people were paying attention to this special documentary. Everyone knew the situation Dragonlith City was facing. The influence of the parasitic dire beasts that erupted worldwide was huge, but many people suffered from not having first-hand information. They did not know where the parasitic dire beasts came from or what was going on. Now, through this special live broadcast documentary, they learned the true colors of the parasitic dire beasts and what exactly happened in Dragonlith City. The lives of 3 million people were all hanging in balance in this battle. This was the most devastating battle between dire beasts and humanity. Many people had lived in safe and peaceful environments since they were young. They could not imagine how cruel war could be. They did not know that their peaceful lives were exchanged through devastating battles between the frontline martial artists and dire beasts. Everyone fell silent as they looked at the menacing, incredibly hideous and terrifying faces. Some children were even crying from fear, but even though they were crying from fear, the adults insisted that the children watch the documentary. This was the most realistic and vivid lesson. It let them know that peaceful life came at a high price. Humans and dire beasts were natural enemies. One of them must die for the other to live. This had nothing to do with right or wrong. It was only about survival. Li Wei was a host and reporter who possessed news acumen. She and cameraman Xiaowu also worked well together. Now that the two of them were gradually approaching the front line, Li Wei was still not satisfied. Continue to go deeper. We have to continue to go deeper into the battlefield. Only by doing so can we obtain first-hand information and capture the truth of the battlefield. Sister Wei, we can't go any deeper. If we go any deeper, we'll encounter dire beasts. It's very dangerous. Xiaowu tried to persuade her. Although he was older than Li Wei was very domineering. Everyone in the television station called Li Wei Sister Wei. And now, Li Wei's domineering side was fully displayed. No, we have to go deeper. Look at our martial artists. They're fighting a bloody battle. We can't just do nothing. Li Wei insisted on going deeper, and Xiaowu could only follow her. The perspective was important in documentaries, but at the same time, there was a protagonist in the documentary. If there was a protagonist, it would undoubtedly make the filming of the entire documentary much easier and more realistic. Therefore, Li Wei was looking for the protagonist on the battlefield. The title of protagonist had to be very representative and could resonate with many people. However, this was not easy to find on the battlefield. In fact, when they went deeper, they even encountered a few dire beasts. Fortunately, with the protection of the escort team, Li Wei and Xiaowu were both safe and sound. However, Li Wei was also covered with foul blood. Li Wei was in a very sorry state, but she also discovered an unusual martial artist in the crowd. This martial artist was very young, probably only about 20 years old. His face still seemed somewhat youthful, but the young martial artist's eyes were very calm, even terrifyingly so. Beside the young martial artist, countless dire beasts had already fallen. Without exception, all of these dire beasts had been shattered into pieces, or heads had been split open. It was extremely frightening. Li Wei overcame the terror in her heart. Her news acumen made her very excited. Xiaowu, aim the camera at him. That's right, it's that young martial artist. We must follow him. Li Wei even charged towards that young martial artist recklessly. Lin Feng stood where he was with his saber in hand. He did not even know that a camera was already aimed at him from behind, let alone that a bold reporter was filming a special documentary featuring him as the protagonist. One dire beast after another had already fallen by his side, but he was not happy in the least. These dire beasts were just cannon fodder that were inexhaustible regardless of how many were killed. No matter how many ordinary dire beasts they killed, they could not tum the situation of the battle around. There were fewer and fewer human martial artists on the entire battlefield. They were almost drowned out by the massive number of dire beasts. He kept charging forward. His speed wasn't fast, but the dire beasts that blocked him fell one after another. He practically slaughtered his way through them. Suddenly, Lin Feng stopped. He saw a dire beast king and a pack of dire beast lords not far away. Boom! Lin Feng stomped on the ground. It was as if the ground was shaking as he leaped forward like a cannonball. 1. Lin Feng leaped forth like a cannonball. He did not know that this scene had appeared in front of everyone in the world through the camera behind him. Ah, this person is so young. He's probably still a student, right? That's right. I heard that many martial artists in Dragonlith City are students of the Myriad Academy. This young man is probably only in his 20s. He's so young, but he has to fight with terrifying dire beasts. Don't die, please don't die. Just as Li Wei had judged, the young Lin Feng's face was even somewhat boyish. His body was not powerfully built either, and he looked a little thin. This seemingly ordinary young man resonated with most people. When they saw Lin Feng, it was as if they saw their own sons, brothers, students, and neighbors. Such a young martial artist might not even be married. Yet he charged towards those savage dire beasts without hesitation. Everyone was fascinated by Lin Feng's figure, even on tenterhooks. They secretly prayed that nothing would happen to Lin Feng. However, Mr. and Mrs. Lin, who were far away in Central Sea, were the most anxious of all. How could the Lin family not know about an incident as huge as the parasitic dire beasts? Mr. and Mrs. Lin naturally saw the live broadcast as well. When they saw that familiar figure on the television screen, their expressions froze slightly. Banger! How is that possible? Didn't Fenger go to the Myriad Academy? He's a new student. Why would he go to the Outland and end up in Dragonlith City? Lin Xiong immediately called the Myriad Academy. After a while, he returned to the living room in a daze. Fenger took the initiative to go to the Outland. That was idiotic of him. But now that things had come to this, Lin Xiong couldn't do anything either. He could only silently pray that nothing would happen to Lin Feng. At the Martial Arts Club of Central Sea University, all the martial arts club members stared intently at the huge screen. When the young figure appeared on the screen, Lin Qian's entire body jolted from shock. She stared at the screen in disbelief. The classmate next to Lin Qian seemed to have realized something as well. She cried out, "Lin Qian, isn't that your brother, Lin Feng? Why is he in Dragonlith City?" How would Lin Qian know? She only knew that her third brother, Lin Feng, had gone to the Myriad Academy. Why would he suddenly appear in Dragonlith City? And she could never be mistaken. That was her third brother, Lin Feng. Third brother, stay safe. Lin Qian had been very strong ever since that incident. However, at this moment, she was praying silently in her heart, and could not help but shed tears. Dragonlith City was such a dangerous place, with dire beasts everywhere. Would Lin Feng survive? Belonging to one of the top 3 martial arts academies in the world, students of the Polar Academy paid close attention to news regarding the other 2 martial arts academies. At this moment, many students from the Polar Academy were sitting in the main hall of the academy, staring intently at the huge screen. A special documentary from Dragonlith City was broadcasting live. The students of the Polar Academy were different from ordinary people. They had long learned the story behind the parasite incident, as well as some exclusive insider information. Hence, someone sighed and said, "Myriad Academy is probably going to suffer heavy losses this time. There are many genius martial artists from Myriad Academy in the Dragon Mountain base." They are all trapped in Dragonlith City now. That's right. Even though the Myriad Academy always accepts heirs of rich families, there are still top geniuses among them. For example, back then, the Demon King Dongfang Shang of the Myriad Academy was truly a top genius that dominated an era. After this, the Myriad Academy will definitely suffer heavy losses. When the scene changed and a young martial artist appeared on the screen, many people were slightly surprised. Taking the initiative to attack? He must be insane. His target seems to be that group of dire beasts. Heavens, they're so big. Is that a king-level dire beast? There's not just a dire beast king, but also a large group of dire beast lords. This person must be a genius of the Myriad Academy. Unfortunately, even if he has the courage to attack first, apart from inhuman experts who have broken the genetic lock, martial artists are doomed regardless of their number when faced with a dire beast kin. He went to the Outland at such a young age, too. What a pity. The martial artists of the Polar Academy naturally had good insight. The sizes of those fleshworm dire beasts were obviously extraordinary. They were clearly dire beast king and dire beast lords. Apart from inhuman experts, who could defeat a dire beast king? They watched helplessly as a genius martial artist who was just as young as them, or even younger than them, was about to be devoured by dire beasts. They felt fear as well. Everyone was on tenterhooks, not knowing what fate awaited that young martial artist. Among the crowd in the Polar Academy, Chu Chun, who was known as one of the 10 freshman goddesses, was naturally the center of attention. However, at this moment, Chu Chen's face was slightly pale, and even her body was trembling slightly. Chunchin, what's wrong? Are you feeling unwell? Chu Chen's friend asked nervously. She had never seen Chu Chen like this since she got to know her. However, Chu Chen did not answer. Instead, she clenched her fists tightly and stared at the figure on the screen. Even though she had been in the Polar Academy for a few months, how could she possibly forget Lin Feng? Lin Feng, how did you go to the Myriad Academy? And to the Outland too? Chu Chun bit her lips so hard that she left a deep bite mark. She could not let go of Lin Feng at all. How could she possibly remain calm when she saw Lin Feng in danger out of the blue? Chu Chen's companion also seemed to have noticed something, and was very shocked. Could Chu Chen's reaction be due to that young martial artist on the screen? It had to be known that ever since Chu Chun came to the Polar Academy, although countless outstanding men had expressed their interest, Chu Chun had never showed affection for anyone. Could it be that there had always been someone in Chu Chen's heart? Chu Chun, you know him, Ito, and I can never forget him. Chu Chen's eyes turned red as she watched Lin Feng charge into the horde of dire beasts without hesitation. At this moment, she looked nothing like the Ice Queen at all. Lin Feng leaped out, followed by Li Wei and the cameraman. Even Li Wei, who was used to seeing extraordinary happenings and kept her cool regardless of the situation, was also very unsettled seeing Lin Feng charge straight at the horde of dire beasts in front. However, she still maintained her professionalism. She said to the camera, I don't know this young martial artist's name or his deeds, but it's apparent that he's very young, and is about to face the king of dire beasts. A dire beast king. Let us keep his figure in mind. Almost no professional martial artist can resist a dire beast king. However, this young martial artist is charging forward with the courage and determination of someone ready to sacrifice his life. In the camera, the saber in Lin Feng's hand was already raised high. No one thought that a miracle would happen when facing a dire beast king. This nameless martial artist was destined to use his tragic actions to stir the hearts of billions of people in the world. This was the spirit of a martial artist, the spirit of humanity. Swish! The saber flickered with a silvery white light. Even on the bloody battlefield, it emanated a very distinctive sense of beauty. This was truly a beautiful strike. Li Wei's mouth fell open. She wanted to say something, but lost her voice at this moment. All she could do was stare blankly at the blade of light. She was even immersed in it. Perhaps Li Wei did not know what this meant. She found even the light from the saber beautiful, and was even immersed in it. However, some senior martial artists knew its significance. The strike of the saber was perfect, whole, and out of this world. Even those inhuman experts who had broken the genetic lock might not have such comprehension in martial arts. Outstanding. Some of the martial artists in the escort team sighed, but their sighs faintly revealed a trace of pity. So what if it was an outstanding strike? Lin Feng was facing a dire beast king, known to be invincible at the professional stage. Slash! Suddenly, a tender and cold voice sounded in the void. Lin Feng slashed down with his saber. This was the strongest strike, a perfect strike, an incredible strike. However, furthermore, this was a strike that could not be matched. Without any hesitation, Lin Feng unleashed 3 spiral forces. A devastating force quickly erupted in his body. The dire beast king opposite seemed to have also sensed Lin Feng's sharp blade. With a low roar, more than 10 thick tentacles lashed out at Lin Feng. The wind whistled. They carried a powerful force. Once they struck Lin Feng, no matter how strong his physique was, he might not be able to withstand it. However, at this moment Lin Feng was fearless. He even closed his eyes as the images of Shui Yuansheng, Gao Tianxi Yushan, and Feng Xiu appeared in his mind. These were good friends who had fought alongside Lin Feng in life-or-death situations. For the public good, Lin Feng wanted to protect the 3 million civilians of Dragonlith City. Moreover, on a personal level, Lin Feng wanted to avenge his friends. Swish! Lin Feng's saber seemed to be becoming faster. Only a dazzling white light was visible to the naked eye. Swish! With one slash, the tentacle was severed. The strike was a slash of loyalty. Shui Yuansheng and Gao Tianxi's resolute expressions still seemed to linger before Lin Feng's eyes. Yushan and Feng Xiu's wistful gazes touched the depths of Lin Feng's heart. 1. Roar. Violent pain assailed the entire body of the fleshworm dire beast king. It simply hurt too much. Its dozen or so tentacles had somehow been severed by a single slash from a puny human martial artist. How was this possible? The dire beast king roared furiously, and there were even many curses mixed in. For some reason, Lin Feng could understand it. He could understand the roar of the dire beast king, as if instinctively. He could even understand the dire beast king ordering the dire beast lords not to interfere. It was going to personally devour him. However, Lin Feng was still very calm. Nothing could stop him now. Second slash. Lin Feng slashed out once again. This slash was filled with fury, resentment, and hatred. This was a strike of revenge. It was revenge for Shui Yuansheng, Gao Tianxi Yushan, and Feng Xiu, but also revenge for all those who had been tragically devoured by fleshworm dire beasts. Thump! Lin Feng's strike of revenge slashed ruthlessly at the massive body of the dire beast king. Its originally pliable, cotton-like body could not withstand the devastating force of more than 80 tons. Hence, Lin Feng's blade sliced the dire beast king into 2 from the top down. However, this was not the end. The regenerative ability of a dire beast king was astonishing. Never mind being cut into 2, it wouldn't die even if it was cut into pieces. Third slash. Lin Feng slashed out again. This slash was filled with duty, protection, and hope. This was a slash of protection. It was a strike meant to protect the 3 million citizens of Dragonlith City and all humans in the world. This strike was also the most powerful strike of all. Lin Feng's saber sped up once more. Even his strength, originally 80 tons in power, seemed to have increased by a great deal. This courage, strength, and determination transformed into Lin Feng's strongest strike. Bang! This strike seemed to contain the power of an explosion. With a single slash, a radius of dozens of meters was filled with a terrifying blade aura. Wherever the blade aura passed, all the dire beasts were shredded. The dire beast king was no exception. As Lin Feng's strongest strike was delivered, the dire beast king's recently recovered body exploded instantly like a balloon. Endless blade aura sliced rapidly, cutting the dire beast king's body into ribbons. The dire beasts around them all stopped. The martial artists who were fighting in the bloody war also seemed to be in disbelief. Li Wei, the cameraman, the escort team, and even the billions of people in front of the screen were stunned. There seemed to be an emotion, a power brewing in their hearts, that was about to erupt. Good! There was no knowing who had shouted it, but the sentiment was echoed by many. They had thought that Lin Feng would be torn to pieces by the dire beast on the screen, but they had not expected Lin Feng to be so strong that he could actually kill a dire beast king. That was an actual dire beast king. Li Wei's eyes lit up. She was very excited. At this moment, there was only one word on her mind: hero. This was a true hero, a true protagonist. In such a despairing situation, what did people need the most? Without a doubt, it was a hero. Moreover, he had not broken the genetic lock, nor was he an inhuman expert. He was only an ordinary martial artist, but an ordinary martial artist had erupted with incredible courage and strength in a desperate situation, and killed a ferocious dire beast king in one fell swoop. If Lin Feng was not a hero, who was? From this moment on, everyone remembered this figure, this strike of the saber, and this young martial artist. Quick, quick, get close to him. We must get close to him. Li Wei was very excited. Even if she had seen only 2 extraordinary scenes, she would still be excited and thrilled that a miracle could happen under such circumstances. However, Lin Feng did not stop. He had merely killed one dire beast king, and there were still tens of thousands of dire beasts around him. Thus, he charged into the horde of dire beasts with his saber, like a tiger charging into a herd of sheep. Those dire beasts were all dire beast lords. However, Lin Feng dealt with them with a slash of his saber each. Every time the light of his saber flashed, it spelled the deaths of dire beasts. This was practically a diabolical battlefield. Blood, broken flesh, and the wails and screams of dire beasts filled the air. At this moment, Lin Feng was a god of war. He had even rallied the conviction of all the martial artists. All of them erupted with unprecedented courage and strength. There was great terror in life-or-death situations, but there was greater potential in life-or-death situations. There was no knowing how many martial artists saw Lin Feng charge into the horde of dire beasts alone with a saber in hand, with not a single dire beast posing a threat to Lin Feng. This was a true hero. The number of dire beasts was overwhelming. There were simply too many of them. It was as if the dire beasts were ubiquitous. Meanwhile, the number of martial artists was dwindling. Previously, many martial artists could still be seen fighting, but as time passed, places where martial artists were still fighting became fewer and fewer. The situation was precarious. Even those inhuman experts fell into danger. This was almost a one-sided battle. The difference was simply too great. However, Lin Feng, who was on camera, had a different feeling. Before their screens, everyone was following the young figure closely. As he swung his blade, dire beasts fell one after another. Invincible. This word seemed to appear in everyone's mind. Invincible. Lin Feng's current performance was invincible. Whether it was elite dire beasts or dire beast lords, wherever Lin Feng went, there would be mountains of dire beast corpses. So what if it's a dire beast king? It still couldn't resist more than 3 saber moves from Lin Feng. Li Wei was very excited. This was a superb material that she would never have dreamed of. She did not expect that she would take a fancy to this hero called Lin Feng at first glance, and that he would turn out to be so impressive. Watching Lin Feng slaughter those grotesque and horrifying fleshworm dire beasts like a hot knife through butter, Li Wei almost thought that Lin Feng was an inhuman expert. However, even though she was not a powerful martial artist herself, with her extensive knowledge, she could tell that Lin Feng definitely had not broken the genetic lock yet. Lin Feng kept going deeper. He would head towards wherever there were more dire beasts and stronger dire beast lords to kill them. Meanwhile, Li Wei kept following Lin Feng. Unknowingly, they were already heavily surrounded by dire beasts. "Sister Wei, we're in trouble." Suddenly, Xiao Wu shouted anxiously from behind her. There was even a hint of fear in his voice. Trouble? Only then did Li Wei return to her senses. She was on a dangerous battlefield. At this moment, she looked around and noticed that there were dire beasts everywhere. Moreover, all of them were glaring menacingly and emitting all sorts of unpleasant sounds. As a woman, no matter how bold, calm, and knowledgeable she was, she could not suppress the fear in her heart at this moment. They were already surrounded, and the escort team would struggle to even defend themselves. Through the camera, many people in front of the screen also saw the situation Li Wei and the others were in. For a moment, many people were silently praying, but if prayers were useful, there wouldn't be so many sacrifices. Kill! The martial artists of the escort team could only fight to the death now. All of them were high-level martial artists, but faced with so many fleshworm dire beasts, whenever they killed one, more would keep coming. There were dire beasts everywhere as far as the eye could see. There was no hope of breaking out of the encirclement at all. Sister Wei, this might be the last shoot. Xiaowu gritted his teeth. He still pointed the camera at the figure in the distance. He might be doomed to fail to complete this documentary, but he wouldn't give up on filming, even up to the last second of his life. Li Wei was also a little panic-stricken. The number of escorts around became fewer and fewer, and all of them were injured. She gritted her teeth and suddenly shouted at the figure in front of her, "Help us!" Li Wei's voice could not travel far in the chaotic battlefield, but the figure in the distance suddenly stopped. Lin Feng was in a very miraculous state. In this state, he could easily understand the voices of these dire beasts. As he continued killing, these fleshworm dire beasts would also feel fear and be afraid. It turned out that savage dire beasts also knew fear. They were also afraid of death. No matter how low their intelligence, they would still fear death. That was the instinct of all living creatures. Panic and fear were spreading. Wherever Lin Feng went, even the fleshworm dire beasts were unwilling to go forward. They were all terrified. Lin Feng did not know why he could understand the language of the fleshworm dire beasts. He vaguely guessed that it might be because he had fused the genes of the fleshworm dire beast, and the genes of a dire beast king at that. However, it's not like he could not understand the voices of wild bovines, unicorns, and proboscis beasts. Hence, this was very strange. There might be a reason unknown to Lin Feng. Just as various sounds of the fleshworm dire beasts were echoing in Lin Feng's ears, he suddenly heard an unfamiliar cry for help. Swoosh! Lin Feng turned around abruptly. With a glance, he saw a strange group in the distance. A few martial artists were following a young and beautiful woman, and there was a video camera. Who was this? Reporter? Cameraman? Lin Feng felt a little strange. These were clearly reporters and cameramen filming a program. Why were they on the battlefield? He had heard of war correspondents, but what kind of program could they possibly film in such a dangerous situation? Save us! Li Wei saw that Lin Feng had noticed her, so she shouted again. Right now, the young martial artist in front was the closest to them. Lin Feng heard the cry for help again. Sure enough, it was this young female reporter asking for help. He did not hesitate. No matter what these people were doing, they were in danger. He could not leave them in the lurch. Whoosh! Lin Feng stomped on the ground, and the ground shook slightly. Then, he shot up violently towards the sky and landed not far from Li Wei. He raised his saber and slashed down. A white light ripped towards all directions. Like reaping wheat, the dire beasts around Li Wei fell one after another. Few were saved. Li Wei heaved a sigh of relief. Similarly, the people in front of their screens also heaved a sigh of relief. Some people even teased, "Yo, the hero saves the beauty. This female reporter is also very beautiful. She might even have to devote her life to him." I checked online. The female reporter is the leading host of the Dragonlith City TV. She's only 24 years old. The two of them look really compatible. A handsome man and a beautiful woman. As long as they can survive this crisis. Too bad it'll be really hard to survive this crisis. The war is already so intense now, and only an hour has passed. There are still 9 more hours to go. The possibility of them surviving until Lord Sage arrives is minuscule. Many people were even discussing it on some forums. However, no matter how they discussed it, there was no solution to the crisis in Dragonlith City this time. With the parasitic dire beast's method of parasitism unknown, no powerful martial artists would come to rescue them. They could only wait for the descent of the invincible Fist Sage. But by that time, Dragonlith City might already be a dead city. Li Wei saw Lin Feng up close. He looked even younger than she had imagined. Only those deep eyes seemed to be full of world weariness. This was someone with a story. Li Wei was experienced and knowledgeable, and she was very good at reading people. "Thank you for saving us." Li Wei expressed her gratitude to Lin Feng. "What are you people doing here?" Lin Feng saw that the camera was focused on him. He frowned slightly. They were still filming at a time like this? Li Wei combed her hair back with her hand and said with a smile, "We are from the Dragonlith City TV. We are currently live streaming a documentary. Martial artists like you fight with dire beasts at the risk of your lives. The responsibility of reporters like us is to show your heroic deeds to everyone in the world. Just now, you killed a dire beast king with 3 slashes. You're invincible in battle. I believe that there are countless people who have gotten to know you on television. Is this a live broadcast?" Lin Feng fell silent. This was a live broadcast for the entire world. His father, mother, sister, his eldest brother, and second brother must all have seen him. And that person in the depths of his heart. Did she see him too? "By the way, what's your name?" Li Wei raised a question that all the audience in the world wanted to know. Who was this young martial artist in front of them? What was his name? Lin Feng's previous performance had undoubtedly made him a hero of humanity. He had received unprecedented attention. However, Lin Feng did not answer. His expression was solemn, as if he was listening to something. Swoosh! Suddenly, Lin Feng opened his eyes and said in a low voice, "Go, they're incoming." "They?" Li Wei was slightly stunned. She seemed to find Lin Feng a little ridiculous. Hadn't Lin Feng killed the surrounding dire beasts? Who were they? Rumble. But soon, Li Wei knew who they were. The 30 enormous demons the sizes of small mountains in the distance turned their gazes towards Lin Feng at this moment, and their eyes seemed to be filled with rage. Clearly, Lin Feng's continuous slaughter just now had attracted the attention of the demons. Li Wei's face turned pale. 2 of the 30 demons had actually split off and were rushing towards them. Even though there was still a distance between them, the powerful, oppressive force was almost suffocating. These were demons on par with inhuman experts. "Sister Wei, let's retreat first. The documentary is still being broadcasted live. We must hold out until the last moment." Xiaowu persuaded. They couldn't do anything by staying here, and would likely be effortlessly killed by the 2 demons. Li Wei took a deep look at the young martial artist not far away. She did not even know his name. However, she also knew that they had to retreat now. They would only become a burden for young martial artist by staying here. At most, they would become more needless sacrifices. "Let's go." Li Wei gritted her teeth. She could only retreat for now. The 2 demons charged recklessly. Their speed could not be considered fast, but their bodies were enormous, and could travel a long distance even with a simple move. Hence, the 2 massive demons quickly came upon Lin Feng. These were true demons, comparable to inhuman experts who had broken the genetic lock. Even Lin Feng felt a very strong threat. The 2 demons growled, but Lin Feng could understand their words. The 2 demons appeared furious. How many dire beasts had Lin Feng alone slaughtered? Even though those fleshworm dire beasts were all cannon fodder, a human martial artist could not be allowed to slaughter them arbitrarily. In particular, as Lin Feng continued to kill them, the other martial artists also regained their confidence and began to go all out in battle again. For a time, although the dire beasts had the absolute advantage, they were unable to break through the human martial artists' line of defense. And now, almost 2 hours had passed. Therefore, the 2 demons were infuriated and decided to deal with it themselves. Even though the 30 demons were all dealing with 16 inhuman experts, they still had a huge advantage even if they spared 2 demons. But now, no one could save Lin Feng. As for escaping, all the human martial artists were fighting to the death right now. Even the inhuman experts' lives were at stake. How could Lin Feng possibly escape? Hence, Lin Feng could not escape. Lin Feng stared intently at the 2 demons in front of him. There were all sorts of voices in his ears, all of which were the angry, growling, and bloodthirsty voices of some dire beasts. These voices lingered in Lin Feng's ears. He could also feel the anger and disdain of the 2 demons. That's right. The 2 demons were very disdainful towards Lin Feng. Or rather, Lin Feng was like a tiny ant, and the two demons did not take him seriously at all. If Lin Feng's performance had not been so eye-catching, they absolutely would not have attacked Lin Feng personally. After all, Lin Feng had not even broken the genetic lock. In their eyes, he was simply too weak. However, this was Lin Feng's opportunity. So what if they were demons? He had defeated the demon king Dongfang Shang, who had dominated an era, and was also capable of slaying numerous dire beast kings. Other than demons, Lin Feng could no longer find opponents that were his match. Normally, Lin Feng might have inhibitions. He would not take the initiative to provoke demons, let alone go to his death. He just wanted to break the genetic lock safely and cure his strange illness, and would not take meaningless risks. But now, everyone was trapped in Dragonlith City. He was destined to fight to the death, and perhaps he would die fighting on the battlefield too. Thus, he abandoned all inhibitions. He no longer thought about breaking the genetic lock, nor did he think about the strange illness, let alone his family and friends. The two demons were the only things in his eyes. They were his enemies, enemies that he must defeat. Swish. Lin Feng moved, and all the power in his body erupted. 3 spiral forces erupted. Lightning arc saber technique unleashed. Lin Feng's speed was infinitely fast, his movement technique infinitely mobile, and his strength infinitely powerful. With 3 bursts, Lin Feng faced death with equanimity and actually took the initiative to slash at one of the demons. When this scene was caught by everyone before their screens in the world, their mouths fell agape, and their eyes were filled with worry. Those were demons. A martial artist who could kill a demon was unheard of. Even the demon king Dongfang Shang, who had dominated an era as an invincible martial artist among professional martial artists, couldn't kill a demon. He couldn't even contend with one. Swoosh. Facing Lin Feng's recklessness, one of the demons casually drew out a tentacle. There was only one tentacle, but with a lash, even the air seemed to explode. Lin Feng felt the wind how one as a terrifying force pressed down like Mount Tai. Slash. Lin Feng used all his strength and slashed forward. Bang. There was a muffled sound. Lin Feng had unleashed his strength to the limit with the swing of his saber. However, when he slashed at this tentacle, it was as if he had struck an iron wall. With Lin Feng's current strength, no matter how strong a steel plate was, it would be sliced in half. However, Lin Feng could not break that single tentacle of the demon. Whoosh! Another tentacle swept over, seemingly with insurmountable force. Lin Feng drew his saber to block it. It was as if his entire body had been struck by a mountain. His entire body felt weak, and even his bones were shaking. It was too powerful. The power of a single strike was far more than 100 tons, and had probably exceeded 200 tons. Normally, an expert who had broken the genetic lock could exert at least 100 tons of force with a casual strike. This was almost the standard for measuring an inhuman expert. However, if they utilized martial arts, they would definitely be stronger. Right now, the demon that Lin Feng was facing had more than 200 tons of force with a casual strike of a tentacle. This meant that this demon was undoubtedly not an ordinary demon. It was comparable to those senior experts who had broken the genetic lock. Lin Feng was smashed directly to the ground by that strike. He could not help but take more than a dozen steps back, and his body almost fell apart. Strong. It was simply too strong. In terms of pure strength, Lin Feng had never encountered such a powerful opponent. Crack. Lin Feng's bones emitted a strange sound. Then, he basically recovered. His physique attributes was even stronger than his strength attributes, and his restorative ability was extremely astonishing. Moreover, Lin Feng had fused with the genes of the fleshworm dire beast king, and even obtained extraordinary restorative ability. Such a minor injury was nothing. Hence, Lin Feng stood up again, holding his saber in hand with an abnormally solemn expression. Through that move just now, Lin Feng knew very well that demons were not easy to deal with. Bang! The demon's tentacles lashed out hard, and it was as if it had struck everyone's heart. Seeing Lin Feng's body smashed onto the ground, many people could not help but feel their hearts clench. That was an actual demon. Please be fine. Demons are indeed demons. This strike probably contained over 100 tons of strength, perhaps even stronger. This young martial artist probably won't be able to withstand it, but I still hope for a miracle. A miracle? Many people called out in their hearts, anticipation appearing in their eyes. They were the most ordinary people and the weakest people of all, but the entire human society was made up of countless such ordinary people. It was the duty of martial artists to protect countless ordinary people like these. These people could be their siblings, their parents, or even their lovers and children. Similarly, in the hearts of everyone, they had already taken Lin Feng, this young and energetic martial artist who had the courage to risk his life against the dire beasts, to be their family. They did not want Lin Feng to die like this. However, that strike just now had already proven the power of demons. That was a power simply beyond the reach of professional martial artists. Everyone's eyes were fixed on the screen. Even Li Wei did not say anything. It was as if the entire world had suddenly fallen silent. Suddenly, Lin Feng's body twitched. He even lifted his head. He's fine. Lin Feng was somehow fine. Good. He withstood a strike from a demon. Impressive. Another top-notch genius has appeared in the Myriad Academy. His future is limitless. If he can survive this encounter, many people were quietly excited. If Lin Feng could withstand a single strike from a demon, would he be able to withstand a second or a third strike? However, the martial artists who knew a little about demons had heavy hearts. This was only one strike. There were more than 10 tentacles on the demon's body. Once it fully activated all of them, how could Lin Feng resist? How difficult would it be to survive this disaster? Lin Feng did not know that his every action had already captured the hearts of billions of people. He lifted his head and stared intently at the demon in front of him. There was not just one, but two. He had confirmed that the strike just now contained at least 200 tons of force. This was only one tentacle. What if there were 2, 3, 4, or more than 10? Lin Feng closed his eyes. He was contemplating the 3 saber moves he had slashed out previously, the slashes of loyalty, revenge, and protection. The 3 strikes could not actually be considered martial arts, but a type of intent. Under that intent, Lin Feng could unleash even stronger power, just as if he had comprehended the true intent in martial arts. Intent and true intent had similarities to a certain extent. They could both erupt with unprecedented power, or rather, potential. Did Lin Feng have potential? Without a doubt, Lin Feng's potential was immense, even greater than he had imagined. Just the genes from the 4 dire beasts he had fused alone contained incredible potential. However, Lin Feng could only unleash a little of his potential now, and he had to rely on a special intent. Swoosh! 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 It was another attack from the demon, and it sent out 3 tentacles at once. These 3 tentacles came from different directions and angles, almost blocking Lin Feng's retreat. Lin Feng could only fight head-on. At this moment, Lin Feng banished all kinds of ideas and thoughts from his mind. He could only fight and fight to the death. Swish! Lin Feng slashed out with his saber again. After the strike, his entire being was immersed in a miraculous state. The cries of Shui Yuansheng, Gao Tianxi, Feng Xiu, and the others echoed in his ears. The voices were fleeting but clear as they kept echoing in his ears. At this moment, Lin Feng's saber seemed to have come alive. He was completely immersed in the realm of intent. Slash of loyalty. Slash of revenge. Slash of protection. Slash. 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 Lin Feng even closed his eyes, but he could clearly sense the 3 tentacles in front of him, whipping towards him at an extremely high speed. Yet he swung his blade. Bang! Lin Feng's body shook, but he did not retreat this time. He could clearly feel that his power seemed to have broken through the limit of strength, breaking past 80 tons, 90 tons, and even 100 tons. 100 tons. That was the standard used to distinguish between inhuman experts who had broken the genetic lock and professional martial artists. But now, Lin Feng had broken this standard. In that miraculous state of intent, the blood in his body seemed to be boiling, and even the dire beast genes in his body were roaring implicitly. Fight! Without any hesitation, the battle was the only thing on Lin Feng's mind at this moment. Swish. Lin Feng struck with his saber again. In that wonderful state of intent, his saber technique had reached perfection and was capable of stimulating the potential within his body. He slashed out 3 times in a row, and each strike landed at the same place. Thump. Finally, Lin Feng combined his 3 slashes. His blade descended with more than 100 tons of strength, and a tentacle that was as thick as an arm broke in response. Green blood sprayed out, emitting a putrid smell. Roar. The demon that had one of its tentacles severed went completely berserk. It was a mighty demon. In its eyes, Lin Feng was like a tiny ant, yet he was actually able to sever one of its tentacles. This was inexcusable, unforgivable. A professional martial artist injuring a demon? Not only did the demon not expect this, countless people before their screens did not expect this either. That huge tentacle was as thick as an arm and extremely tough. Even an expert who had broken the genetic lock would need some effort to sever a tentacle, let alone a professional martial artist. They were somewhat incredulous, but more than that, they were excited. What was this? It was an eruption in a hopeless situation and the ignition of potential. This was a spiritual victory. So what if this was a state of despair? So what if there were tens of thousands of dire beasts? So what if there were demons? Courage, strength, and determination could create miracles. Lin Feng had created a miracle that uplifted the hearts of people. Perhaps he did not know what this strike meant, but just look at those martial artists in dire straits. They went insane, completely insane, and were even willing to perish together with those dire beasts. This was the spirit that Lin Feng had brought. This was something that even inhuman experts who had broken the genetic lock could not do. At this moment, Lin Feng was the undisputed hero of the entire Dragonlith city, and even all of humanity. Lin Feng severed one of the demon's tentacles, but this minor injury did not affect the demon at all. The severed tentacle quickly regrew. However, to it, this was a great humiliation. Hence, the 2 demons moved together. The overwhelming rain of tentacles were like an impermeable net enveloping Lin Feng. The howling wind was filled with the anger and killing intent of the 2 demons. At this moment, Lin Feng could not back down. He would not back down either. Slash of loyalty. Slash of revenge. Slash of protection. 3 strikes in one. Slash. Lin Feng's entire body was almost rendered into a white glow by the light of his saber. It was as if he himself had transformed into a giant blade as he collided fiercely with the overwhelming tentacles. Boom! As Lin Feng transformed into a giant blade and rammed fiercely into the densely packed tentacles, white light flashed and faded in an instant, like a momentary bloom. Through the camera, everyone could clearly see that Lin Feng had severed 3 or 4 tentacles in succession with one strike of his saber. At the same time, however, more tentacles lashed hard at Lin Feng's body. Snap! Unparalleled pain. It was as if all the bones in his body had been shattered. Horrific wounds were ripped open on his flesh by countless tentacles. Blood flowed profusely. Lin Feng was almost doused in blood as he was smashed into the ground. Even his saber was tossed to the side. Smoke and dust filled the air, but Lin Feng, who had been smashed into a huge pit in the ground, could no longer move. No matter how astonishing his restorative ability was, all the bones in his body were shattered now, and his body was covered in blood. As his blood drained away, he seemed to feel that his life force was draining as well. Silence. Everyone in front of the screen fell silent. Li Wei's mouth fell open, but she covered it tightly with her hand. She didn't dare to speak, afraid that speaking would attract the attention of the 2 demons. However, even if Li Wei could control her voice, she could not control the tears in her eyes. Li Wei, who was used to extraordinary happenings and all kinds of tragedies, could no longer hold back her tears when she saw Lin Feng being smashed into the huge pit and stop moving. It wasn't just Li Wei. Many people in front of the screen already had tears streaming down their faces. Mrs. Lin, Lin Qian, and Chu Chun were all praying silently in their hearts, hoping for a miracle and for Lin Feng to stand up. However, miracles were called miracles precisely because they were so difficult to come by. The two demons seemed to feel that this was not enough to vent their rage. Hence, they waved their tentacles in anger again and whipped them fiercely at Lin Feng's body. Thud. Each lash exceeded 200 tons in strength. If it were any other martial artist, they would probably have stopped breathing long ago. Even those experts who had broken the genetic lock could not withstand the repeated lashings. Twice, thrice, countless people in front of the screen were already sobbing uncontrollably. The miracle they were hoping for did not happen. Fenger, Mr. and Mrs. Lin were agonized, but there was nothing they could do. Third brother. Lin Qian recalled that when she was in danger, it was her third brother, Lin Feng, who had rushed in. At that moment, she felt that Lin Feng was the most lovely and reliable person in the world. But now, Lin Feng was lying on the ground, being whipped by the demons again and again. She could not even bear to look. Chu Chen also shed silent tears. She did not cry aloud, but her heart ached incomparably. Although she had arrived at the Polar Academy, it could not be denied that Lin Feng still left his mark in her heart. This was not something that could be forgotten in a day or two, nor in a year or two. She recalled the first time she met Lin Feng. At that time, Lin Feng was polite and refined. Although he was a little taciturn, he was very gentle and gave her a warm feeling. Chu Chen's family underwent an upheaval when she was young. This warm feeling was something she very much needed. She could not say why she liked Lin Feng, who seemed very ordinary back then, but she did like him, and with heartfelt feeling. Even when she chose to leave back then, it was because hope would not arrive for her waiting, and she had left in pain. She had even been looking forward to meeting him again one day. But now everything was shattered. The hope in her heart was shattered like a mirror. She could only watch helplessly as Lin Feng was beaten to a pulp by the demons, and even watch helplessly as he was dying. She, on the other hand, could do nothing. This kind of agony was bone deep. At this moment, Lin Feng did not even feel pain. He felt that the world was very dark. There no longer seemed to be any sound around. However, he could sense that the demon's tentacles were whipping his body again and again. More than 200 tons of strength was contained in it. His life was draining away with each lash. No matter how strong his restorative ability was, it was futile. Lin Feng understood that he was going to die. Is it finally over? What a pity. I still haven't broken the genetic lock. I wish I could go home one more time. Father, mother, big brother, second brother, sister. Goodbye forever. And Chu Chun, actually, I've never told you that you're in my heart. It's a pity that I may never have the chance to tell you now. I'm so tired. I can finally rest. Lin Feng did not feel any pain. He even felt very relaxed, as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders. He was very tired. Ever since he learned that he was suffering from an incurable and strange illness, he had been carrying a heavy burden. He did not even dare to accept the person he liked, nor did he dare to try out the fun things that youngsters deserve to enjoy. He had always lived under heavy pressure. Even after obtaining the genetic fusion device, he had always been under pressure. Now he was about to die. He had used all his strength, but was still unable to defeat his opponents. Since he was unable to defeat them, he might as well let it go completely. Unknowingly, Lin Feng's consciousness was completely immersed in darkness. If there was no miracle, when his consciousness completely sank into the darkness, he would really be dead. A miracle. Everyone was calling for a miracle, but looking at the enormous bodies of the two demons, many people felt despair. Swoosh! Suddenly, one of the demons swept up Lin Feng's battered body with its tentacles and opened its ravenous maw. This demon was going to devour Lin Feng alive. It was going to devour the hero of humanity. Ha 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 ha! You bastards! Don't think it's that easy to kill me. Suddenly, in the great battle in the distance, an inhuman expert who had broken the genetic lock laughed maniacally. The inhuman expert was surrounded and attacked by the three demons. His body was already riddled with injuries, and even moving was difficult. He had been holding out desperately the entire time. Just now, his hands were entangled by the tentacles of a few demons. Even his body was entangled. Once the demons approached, he might be torn to pieces by the three demons as well. Thus he laughed maniacally. At the same time, a violent gust of wind seemed to blow over the battlefield. With the inhuman expert at the center, a faint tornado appeared. No! Long Duo's eyes were bloodshot. The expressions of the other inhuman experts changed drastically as well. They shouted loudly, but it was useless. As the violent wind grew stronger, it emitted a frightening aura. A feeling of great terror was brewing in the hearts of dire beasts and human martial artists alike, as if a tremendous danger was gradually approaching. Storm reversal erupt. As the inhuman expert roared, the tornadoes around him immediately drilled into his body. At the same time, his body exploded like an enormous bomb. Boom! A mighty shockwave swept in all directions. Everything within a radius of hundreds of meters, be it demons, dire beasts, or human martial artists, was within the blast radius. All the dire beasts were ripped into pieces by the terrifying shockwave. The demons that were using their tentacles to wrap around Lin Feng moved a little further away, but they were also hit by the impact. The violent impact sent the two demons flying. Lin Feng's body landed heavily on the ground again, and he rolled for a long distance before stopping. Whether it was on the battlefield or in front of their screens, everyone was shocked by this scene. However, at the same time, a trace of fear and sorrow arose in the depths of everyone's hearts. An inhuman expert. It was an inhuman expert who had broken the genetic lock, one of the most tenacious defenders of mankind. Seeing an inhuman expert die in such a tragic way with their own eyes, everyone felt a sense of sorrow. Only at this moment did many people suddenly realize that this was not just a war for the 3 million people in Dragonlith City, but a war for all humans in the world. Most of the people in the world were watching this special documentary on screen. Previously, when they felt sorrow, shed tears, and showed sympathy, those were actually cheap sympathy, sorrow, and tears. Perhaps even they themselves did not realize what this war meant. They could not empathize with it. Even if all 3 million people in Dragonlith City were dead, they would only think of it as a string of numbers. Without seeing it with their own eyes, there was no way they could empathize through a screen. They were sitting at home in air conditioning and enjoying sumptuous food. At most, they would cry a little. How could they understand the cruelty of the battlefield? However, things were different now. An inhuman expert who had broken the genetic lock was dead. Although human society was technologically advanced, due to the threat of the dire beasts in the outland, martial artists, especially the inhuman experts who had broken the genetic lock, were the pillars of human society. Everyone had grown up listening to the legends of inhuman experts. In the eyes of many ordinary people, once one had broken the genetic lock, they were practically invincible. The inhuman experts were omnipotent. They expanded frontiers and protected humans. Few people would think that inhuman experts could die. In their impression, inhuman experts dying in battle was almost unheard of. But now, an inhuman expert was indeed dead. Moreover, it happened right in front of their eyes. Through the screen, they could feel the sorrow of the inhuman expert before his death, and the brutality of the battlefield. Only at this moment did many people realize that the 3 million citizens of Dragonlith City were not a string of numbers, but living people like themselves. Martial artists risked their lives on the battlefield, not for the sake of earning their cheap tears and sympathy, but truly to protect them with their lives. This war happening thousands of kilometers away was not a war that had nothing to do with them, but a war that decided their fates, and was inextricably linked to them. With the death of an inhuman expert, many ordinary people had an awakening. Perhaps this would become a major turning point in human history in the future. Humans had been at peace for too long, to the point that ordinary people had even long forgotten the threat of dire beasts. Thus, many people even began to petition in front of the government buildings and in front of the various armed forces buildings of various states to send experts to assist Dragonlith City. Some martial artists even organized teams online with the intention of saving Dragonlith City themselves, but all of them were stopped by the government. The battlefield was in shambles. Originally, a total of 16 inhuman experts retreated from the Dragon Mountain base to Dragonlith City, but now only 15 were left. Inhuman experts shared a deep friendship. This was because even the weakest inhuman expert could live for more than 200 years, which could be considered longevity. If there were no hidden injuries, they could even live for more than 300 years. As a result, many inhuman experts had known each other for many years and developed a deep friendship. But now, one of them had died, which invoked great sorrow in the other 15 inhuman experts. However, the death of an inhuman expert was only the beginning. Although the blast from the inhuman expert's self-detonation was very strong, and the 3 demons in the center were all blasted into pieces at once, they were not dead. Their flesh squirmed and they quickly recovered. This was the terrible regenerative ability of the fleshworm dire beasts. If their body tissues were not quickly destroyed, these demons would be impossible to kill. This was also the real reason why, even though so many inhuman experts had clearly severely injured the demons earlier, they still could not kill these demons in the end. This also caused the situation of the inhuman experts to become increasingly dangerous. The self-detonation of the inhuman experts also attracted the attention of those demons. Lin Feng was undoubtedly lucky. After the 2 demons were sent flying by the shockwave of the explosion, they stopped paying attention to Lin Feng and joined the ranks of the demons who were besieging the inhuman experts instead. Lin Feng lay in a pool of blood, amidst a pile of dire beast corpses. In contrast, he did not attract much attention. Even the camera had left Lin Feng and was focused on the inhuman experts who had broken the genetic lock. No matter how outstanding Lin Feng's performance was before, no matter how valiant he was, his influence was naturally far inferior to that of the inhuman experts. All eyes were also focused on the inhuman experts, because the remaining 15 inhuman experts might decide the outcome of this war and the fate of the 3 million people in Dragonlith City. The 15 inhuman experts, including Chief Commander Long Duo, were actually all in imminent danger. The 15 inhuman experts were stronger than those demons in terms of attacking power. In a one-on-one battle, the inhuman experts would always have the advantage. This was thanks to martial arts. After human martial artists broke the genetic lock, they would obtain physiques that could contend with those demons, as well as all kinds of miraculous abilities. However, human martial artists still possessed martial arts. Martial arts were originally created to defeat a stronger party from a position of weakness, so in a situation where there was not much difference between their physiques, human martial artists naturally had the advantage. If these weren't fleshworm dire beasts, a miracle might really happen. Unfortunately, these fleshworm dire beasts might possess an ability, and that was regenerative ability, also known as immortality. There was no such thing as absolute immortality in this world, but these dire beasts that looked like gigantic fleshworms all had terrifying regenerative powers. Even if their heads were smashed into pieces, they would recover very quickly. They could rapidly recover from any serious injuries to any part of their bodies. If they could wantonly destroy the body tissues of these demons in a short period of time and preventing them from converging, after a period of time, these demons would naturally die. However, the 30 demons would never allow human martial artists to destroy their body tissues arbitrarily. As a result, the 15 inhuman experts were in an extremely difficult situation. Without a miracle, this was destined to be a war doomed to failure. However, the 15 inhuman experts did not give up. Even the professional martial artists besieged by the dire beasts did not give up. They still had a sliver of hope. Even though this sliver of hope was too minuscule, they continued to persevere. 10 hours. As long as they could hold out for 10 hours, one of the 9 sages, the invincible Fist Sage, would arrive at Dragonlith City. At that time, no matter how strong these demons were or how many dire beasts there were, they would be safe. This was not blind reverence, but absolute confidence. Sages were magnificent existences that suppressed the terrifying great demons in the depths of the Outland. They were the greatest guarantee that humanity could rely on to survive in this world. Although only 2 hours had passed, having some hope was better than none at all. Lin Feng's figure was no longer on camera. Perhaps most people had already forgotten about that young martial artist who had appeared time and again. However, some people did not forget. Na spacious room. A man who had lost his legs was staring intently at the television screen. He was Yushan, who was lucky enough to return to his hometown from Dragonlith City beforehand. In his despondent state, He had returned to his hometown without even bidding farewell to Lin Feng. However, never in a million years did he expect a parasite incident to break out in Dragonlith City. He was all too familiar with those damn fleshworm dire beasts. It was precisely because of these dire beasts that he had lost his legs and his pride as a martial artist. Ow, these damn dire beasts were making a comeback. Countless former comrades of his were fighting desperately at the front line, while he was the only one lying in a wheelchair, watching this bleak scene through the screen. When he saw the inhuman expert self-destruct and Lin Feng's heavily injured body fall to the ground, he clenched his hands tightly, and veins bulged on his arms. Lin Feng, get up. You could save me back then. You could kill a dire beast king. You could create miracles time and time again. You can definitely do it again this time. There is great terror in life or death situations, but also great opportunity. Get up quickly. You can break the genetic lock. You can create miracles. Break the genetic lock. Fulfill the dream that Shui Yuanxing Gao Tianxi and I cannot. You can definitely break the genetic lock. Yushan knew that Lin Feng could not hear him, but he still yelled at the top of his lungs. This was his comrade, a comrade that he could not give up even in death, and a close friend who bore his dreams. Yushan's eyes were bloodshot, and his fingernails had even dug into his palm. Blood flowed out, but his gaze was filled with unprecedented determination, and with eager anticipation and desire. This was his silent cry. For the sake of our shared dream, for the sake of surviving, Lin Feng, you must break the genetic lock. You must. You must. You must.